picture this. It's 3 in the morning, and you were just dead asleep. Suddenly, your eyes snap open.
Yeah, you're wide awake.
Right, you're staring at the ceiling, heart hammering against your ribs like you just ran a full sprint. And for a second, you're lying there in the dark, confused.
And then the heat hits you.
Exactly, that massive suffocating wave of heat radiating from your chest outward. And then instantly, just drenching sweat.
It's an incredibly jarring experience that millions of women go through every single night.
Oh, absolutely.
And the most counterintuitive part of that entire sequence is that the physical sweat didn't actually wake you up. The neurological alarm bell ringing inside your brain did.
Wow. Well, welcome to this deep dive. Today, our mission is to unpack a phenomenon that affects, up to 80% of women during the menopausal transition. We're talking about night sweats.
And we're going to explore exactly what they are and how these events systematically hijack your sleep architecture.
Right. And to do this, we are pulling from a really robust stack of sources today. We've got massive data pulls from the Apple Women's Health Study, deep dive clinical guidelines from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and a wealth of scientific literature on thermoregulation and sleep biology.
It's a lot of ground to cover.
It really is. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because a night sweat isn't just about, feeling a little warm because your duvet is too thick.
Not at all.
We're talking about a profound neurological and cardiovascular event that is essentially masquerading as a temperature issue.
Yeah, to understand how night sweats so thoroughly dismantle your ability to rest, we first have to look at the underlying biology of what a vasomotor symptom actually is.
Okay, walk me through it.
Because people constantly blame their environment. They think, oh, the bedroom is too hot, or I bought the wrong mattress, or the pajamas are too heavy.
I mean, guilty as charged.
Right, but it's an internal miscommunication. It originates in this tiny, almond-sized region of the brain called the hypothalamus, which basically functions as your body's internal thermostat.
And during a woman's reproductive years, that thermostat is essentially being maintained by estrogen and progesterone, right?
Exactly.
But as you enter perimenopause and menopause, those hormone levels, they don't just decline, they fluctuate wildly.
They're completely on a roller coaster.
Yeah, and that hormonal chaos causes the hypothalamus to become just hyper-reactive to core body temperature. Which brings us to this brilliant concept our sources introduce called the thermoneutral zone.
Yeah, the thermoneutral zone. This is the specific temperature range where your body feels perfectly comfortable.
Okay.
You aren't shivering to generate heat, and you aren't sweating to release it. Your body is simply operating at equilibrium.
That sounds nice.
It is. And in asymptomatic women, meaning women who are not experiencing hot flashes, this zone is about 0.4 degrees Celsius wide.
So there's a little bit of a buffer.
Exactly. That fraction of a degree provides a necessary biological buffer. So your core temperature can drift up or down slightly without triggering any drastic physiological response.
But in women suffering from hot flashes, the sources note that this zone narrows down to virtually 0.0 degrees Celsius.
Which means there is zero margin for error.
Right. So what does this all mean? It's like living in a house where the central HVAC system has completely lost its mind.
That is a really great analogy.
Yeah, the air conditioning kicks into maximum overdrive. The absolute second the living room gets a microscopic fraction of a degree too warm, and then the furnace blasts at full power the second it cools down.
Yeah.
There's just zero buffer.
Which means the brain is constantly perceiving a state of emergency. Your core temperature barely nudges upward, maybe just from the heat trapped by your own blanket.
Just normal sleep stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But because you have no thermoneutral buffer, your hypothalamus reads that microscopic shift as a critical overheating event. So it triggers this massive systemic release of heat to save you from a threat that doesn't actually exist.
And the physical cascade that follows is violent. Your blood vessels rapidly dilate, which is vasodilation.
Right.
And that forces warm blood away from your core and out to the surface of your skin to vent the heat. Your heart rate spikes dramatically to pump all that blood.
Yeah, and your sweat glands go into overdrive to cool the skin through evaporation.
And then you face the inevitable backlash.
Because your body just aggressively cooled itself down when it didn't actually need to.
Exactly. So your core temperature plummets below the comfort baseline. And that triggers a profound chill.
Oh, the shivering.
Yeah. You go from kicking off the covers, completely drenched,
Yeah.
to suddenly shivering and pulling the heavy duvet back up to your chin.
It is a grueling physical roller coaster to ride in the middle of the afternoon, let alone when you are actively trying to sleep.
Which brings us to the fundamental collision at the center of this deep dive.
Yes.
We've established that the body is violently, sporadically regulating its temperature. But your body actually requires a very specific temperature trajectory to fall asleep and stay asleep.
It really does. The biological mandate for sleep is cooling down.
Right, so our master body clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN, dictates our circadian rhythms. And to initiate sleep, the SCN signals the body to drop its core temperature by about 0.5 to 1 degree Celsius.
And the sleep hormone melatonin actually facilitates this drop.
Oh, so?
Well, it pushes warm blood from the core out to your hands and feet. It turns your extremities into radiators that vent heat into the room.
What's fascinating here is that night sweats completely shatter this delicate, required cooling process.
Completely.
Instead of a smooth, gradual temperature drop that guides you down into deep, restorative sleep, the broken thermostat of the hypothalamus creates these violent thermal spikes.
Yeah, it's actively fighting the physiological state required for rest.
That's a physiological tug-of-war.
And the disruption becomes particularly destructive during REM sleep.
Rapid eye movement sleep.
Exactly. This is the stage where we dream, consolidate memories, and process emotional information.
Right.
It's a highly active brain state. But to protect you from acting out your dreams, the brain temporarily paralyzes most of your voluntary muscles.
Which makes sense.
But what people don't realize is that this paralysis also extends to your thermoregulatory systems.
Wait, really? So your ability to actively sweat or shiver is essentially taken offline while you dream?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Which makes REM sleep incredibly vulnerable.
I never thought about that.
Right. So if your core temperature drifts, or if your hypothalamus suddenly misfires and perceives an overheating emergency during a REM cycle, your brain realizes its cooling systems are paused.
Oh, no.
So it has no choice but to force you awake.
to turn the systems back on.
Exactly. It yanks you out of REM sleep, or shifts you into a much lighter sleep stage, just so it can turn the sweating mechanism back on and regain control of your temperature. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. I was reading through the clinical literature in our stack, specifically the polysomnographic data where they monitor women's brain waves in sleep labs.
Oh, yeah.
And the common assumption is always, you get hot, you start sweating, and the physical discomfort of the wet pajamas wakes you up.
That is what everyone assumes.
But the brainwave data flips that completely.
It does, and it fundamentally reframes the experience of menopausal insomnia.
Yeah?
Those sleep lab studies reveal that many women experience neurological awakenings, cortical arousals, before the physical hot flash even begins.
Especially in the second half of the night.
Exactly. The misfire in the hypothalamus happens first.
So that chemical signal acts as a neurological alarm that jolts you awake.
Yeah, you are suddenly lying there, conscious, your heart starts to race, and then the massive wave of heat and sweat washes over you a few moments later.
That is just wild to me. So you aren't losing sleep simply because you need to change your sheets or flip your pillow to the cool side?
Not at all. Your brain is actively interrupting your sleep cycles from the inside out, prioritizing thermal survival over sleep architecture.
And because these internal alarms are ringing multiple times a night, the cumulative effect over months or years is just devastating.
It really is.
We don't have to guess about the scale of this devastation either. The Apple Women's Health Study gives us incredible objective data on this.
They really do.
They didn't just survey a few dozen women. They tracked 338 participants over 94,118 nights of sleep.
That is a massive data set.
Right, using wearable sensors that monitored heart rate variability, movement, and sleep stages.
And the data shows that in the 18 months leading up to menopause, 60% of the women experience a 7% increase in WASO.
Now, for anyone unfamiliar, WASO is wake after sleep onset.
Right. It's the metric used to track the total amount of time you spend awake in the middle of the night after you initially fall asleep.
It's essentially a primary indicator of sleep fragmentation. To put that fragmentation into perspective, the study found that after menopause, participants spent an average of 4 extra minutes awake per night compared to their baseline.
And isolated like that, 4 minutes might sound pretty trivial.
Right. But the researchers compared this to a control group of women who simply aged 2 years without going through the menopausal transition.
And what did they find?
Normal aging only added 1 extra minute of wakefulness. So menopause essentially quadrupled that baseline disruption.
Wow. And keep in mind, those minutes are an average, meaning many women are experiencing significantly more wakefulness.
Definitely.
And the physical awakenings birth a secondary psychological toll, which is the insomnia loop.
Oh, the dreaded loop.
Right, because when your sleep is repeatedly shattered by jarring, uncomfortable night sweats, you develop hypervigilance.
You go to bed dreading the next sweat.
Exactly. Your brain stays in a lighter defensive sleep stage because it's anticipating the alarm.
So you're basically sleeping with one eye open.
Yeah, and that chronic anxiety elevates your cortisol levels, which further disrupts your sleep and your temperature regulation.
Creating a completely self-sustaining cycle of exhaustion. You end up wired and utterly exhausted.
It's an awful cycle.
But if you are lying in bed, awake and exhausted, our sources make a really crucial point about differential diagnosis.
This raises an important question, actually.
Because a racing heart and fragmented sleep aren't exclusively caused by vasomotor symptoms.
No, they aren't. How do you differentiate between menopausal night sweats and obstructive sleep apnea?
That's a huge point.
Because the medical literature clearly notes that a woman's risk for developing sleep apnea increases significantly post-menopause.
And this comes back to hormones too, right? Because progesterone doesn't just act on the reproductive system and the hypothalamus.
Right. It also helps support the muscle tone in your upper airway.
So when those progesterone levels plummet during menopause, the muscles in the throat relax more than they used to.
Which makes the airway prone to collapsing during sleep.
Which is the mechanical definition of obstructive sleep apnea.
Precisely. You stop breathing, oxygen levels drop, and your brain sends a surge of adrenaline to wake you up so you gasp for air.
It's another internal alarm system.
Exactly.
If both conditions feature the brain forcing you awake in a panic, how do you actually tell the difference in the moment?
You really have to pay close attention to the sensory details of the awakening.
Okay, what should we look for?
Well, a night sweat is characterized by that distinct, powerful wave of intense heat followed by profuse, drenching sweating.
Right, the heat waves.
But an awakening caused by sleep apnea often feels very different. You might wake up with a sensation of gasping, choking, or sudden breathlessness.
So less about heat, more about air.
Exactly. Apnea is also strongly associated with waking up with a persistent dry mouth, a morning headache, and a profound sense of unrefreshing sleep.
Meaning you could be in bed for 8 or 9 hours, but because you were micro-waking dozens of times an hour to breathe, you feel like you haven't slept at all.
Exactly right.
Identifying the right culprit is so vital because the treatment pathways diverge entirely here.
They really do.
If the issue is vasomotor, driven by that broken hypothalamus thermostat, we have to look at how to reclaim your rest.
It's time to separate the evidence-based medical interventions from the folklore.
Yes. So, looking at the clinical guidelines from the RCOG, hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, remains the gold standard.
It is the most effective treatment for vasomotor symptoms.
Because it actually fixes the root issue, right?
Exactly. By systematically replacing the declining estrogen, HRT effectively repairs the broken thermostat.
It restores that buffer in your thermoneutral zone.
Right, resolving up to 90% of hot flashes and night sweats for most women.
But while HRT is highly effective, it's not a universal option.
No, some women have specific medical contraindications, like a history of hormone-sensitive breast cancers.
Or they simply prefer a non-hormonal route, which is totally fair.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking at the alternative medical treatments in the guidelines, and I see SSRIs and SNRIs listed, specifically medications like venlafaxine.
Yes.
Those are antidepressants. I'm struggling a bit to see the link between a mood disorder medication and a physical sweat.
It definitely seems disconnected at first until you look at how the brain actually communicates.
Okay, walk me through it.
So SSRIs are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, and SNRIs also target norepinephrine.
Right.
These medications alter the levels of those specific neurotransmitters in the brain. And it turns out that serotonin and norepinephrine are deeply embedded in the neural pathways the hypothalamus uses to regulate temperature.
Oh, wow. So by stabilizing those neurotransmitters, you inadvertently stabilize the thermostat.
Exactly, which significantly reduces the frequency of those false alarms.
That's incredibly cool. The literature also points to gabapentin, which is a nerve medication originally developed for seizures, showing a strong ability to reduce the severity of night sweats.
Yes, it can be very effective.
There's even this fascinating emerging treatment called a stellate ganglion block,
Oh, right.
where they essentially inject a local anesthetic into a specific nerve cluster in the neck, and it acts like a hard reboot for the sympathetic nervous system.
The system responsible for that fight-or-flight heat response?
Exactly.
Mm.
So we have an increasingly sophisticated medical toolkit here.
We do, but we also have to address the massive market of alternative botanical therapies.
Supplement aisles.
They are packed with products promising to cure menopausal symptoms overnight. Black cohosh, evening primrose oil, phytoestrogens derived from soy or red clover.
Right, and we have to report on this impartially, looking strictly at what the clinical data actually proves versus what the marketing copy claims.
Which is important.
So what do the RCOG guidelines conclude about these botanicals?
The clinical data is highly conflicting, and it generally points to poor efficacy. Yeah, when subjected to rigorous, large-scale systematic reviews, most of these botanicals show no significant overall difference in the frequency or severity of hot flashes when compared to a placebo.
Wow.
The placebo effect in menopause treatments is actually quite strong. But biologically, the supplements aren't repairing the thermostat.
And the sources also highlight that natural doesn't inherently mean harmless.
Definitely not.
These are largely unregulated supplements, meaning purity and active dosage can vary wildly from bottle to bottle. Like there are documented reports linking certain preparations of black cohosh to liver toxicity.
And furthermore, phytoestrogens possess weak estrogen-like properties.
Which sounds okay until you think about the contraindications.
Right. If a woman is specifically avoiding HRT because she is undergoing treatment for a hormone receptor-positive breast cancer, introducing unregulated plant-based estrogens into her system could potentially interfere with critical cancer medications like tamoxifen.
The clinical consensus is pretty clear then. The evidence for their efficacy is weak, and they are not without risk. So if the supplement aisle isn't the answer, let's pivot to some immediate, practical sleep hygiene hacks you can implement tonight to help your body manage the thermal chaos.
Let's do it.
The goal is to aggressively support that core temperature drop the SCN requires. The sources recommend keeping the bedroom remarkably cool.
Specifically between 16 to 18 degrees Celsius, or about 60 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's pretty chilly.
It is, but by maintaining a consistently cool ambient environment, you ensure that any heat your body attempts to vent is immediately pulled away.
Rather than just lingering around you in a pocket of warm air under the blankets.
Exactly.
And your bedding plays a massive role in that heat transfer. Like synthetic fabrics, polyester pajamas, or those dense memory foam mattresses, they're essentially thermal traps.
They really are. They just hold on to heat and moisture.
Yeah, the literature strongly suggests transitioning to breathable, natural fibers like wool, linen, or bamboo.
Because these materials actively wick moisture away from your skin.
So if you do experience a night sweat, natural fibers help you avoid waking up trapped in a damp, freezing cocoon during that subsequent chill phase.
Yes, that is key. And there is also a brilliantly simple biomechanical hack for manually overriding your body temperature.
Yes. I love this detail in the research. Tell them.
It's so simple. Just keep your hands and feet outside the covers.
Sounds a bit silly, but it works, right?
It really does. Your hands and the soles of your feet have a very high surface area to volume ratio, and they contain these specialized networks of blood vessels called arteriovenous anastomoses.
Arteriovenous anastomoses. Try saying that 3 times fast.
I won't even try. But they function exactly like thermal exhaust ports.
I love that visual.
Right, because they lack hair and are highly vascularized. Exposing your feet and hands to the cool 16-degree air of your bedroom vents heat directly from your core out into the environment.
Helping to basically bypass the broken thermostat in your brain.
Exactly.
Sticking a foot out of the blanket is literally a scientifically backed thermal intervention. You knew.
It's pretty amazing.
But to be real, all the bamboo sheets in the world won't cure the anxiety of the insomnia loop we discussed earlier.
No, they won't.
If you are lying awake terrified of the next sweat, your cortisol is spiking.
And this is where cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, or CBTI, is heavily featured in the clinical recommendations.
Okay, so therapy.
Yes, but to be clear, CBTI is not going to physically stop the hypothalamus from misfiring. It won't prevent the sweat.
Right. What it does is break the psychological stress multiplier.
Precisely. It dismantles the hypervigilance.
Because you are retraining your brain's reaction to the event.
Exactly. It equips you with behavioral strategies to manage the panic of waking up drenched. It teaches you how to physically downregulate your nervous system in the dark.
And how to structure your sleep habits so you fall back asleep faster, rather than catastrophizing about the sleep you are losing.
Right. It takes the fear out of the process.
So, to synthesize this deep dive into the menopausal transition, Night sweats are clearly far more than just a minor environmental discomfort.
They really are.
They are a complex, systemic neurological misfire born from a vanishing thermoneutral zone. The brain's danger alarm is triggering a massive cardiovascular response over literally a fraction of a degree.
And this directly collides with the biological cooling required for deep and REM sleep.
Exactly. But you are not powerless against the biology.
Not at all.
Armed with data tracking, highly effective medical options ranging from HRT to neurotransmitter stabilizers, and practical environmental hacks like, thermal exhaust ports, you can actively reclaim your sleep architecture.
You absolutely can. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, there is a rather profound way to reframe this entire challenging experience.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Well, we've explored how heavily our master body clock relies on temperature to dictate our circadian rhythms and essentially tell time.
Right.
So when you track your night sweats or when you lie awake feeling those thermal shifts, you aren't just managing a frustrating symptom.
What are you doing?
You are actually getting a unique, visceral window into observing your own brain's internal clock, attempting to recalibrate to an entirely new biological era.
Wow.
By paying close attention to these temperature rhythms, you're literally listening to your own neurobiology adapt in real time.
It's like being allowed to stare directly at the dashboard while the engine rewires itself while speeding down the highway.
That is a perfect way to describe it.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these nuggets of insight, throw one foot out from under those breathable covers tonight, and finally get a much better night's rest.